Welcome back. You tune into Buy Now Sell Now. We're getting you all the updates from the market, and Delivery remains confident of delivering 15 to 18% growth, with the CEO Sahil Barua telling ET Now that volumes have remained resilient in the current quarter despite the global uncertainties. The company says it will continue investing in capacity, robotics and AI while expanding its global fulfillment network through, though it has no plans to launch transportation operations overseas. Here's an excerpt that exclusive chat he had with my colleague Sumita Karir. Let's take a look.
So it's been 15 years and really time flies. I think the biggest decision that we made, which is correct right at the start, was to say, look, we're going to treat Indian logistics as a whole as sort of the addressable market for delivery. Our focus has always been, how do we service all of our customers' needs? And over a period of time, I think that stood the company in good stead. We obviously started in e-commerce, which is where the biggest opportunity for us at the time was. But as we've grown over the years, we've expanded into multiple new services, whether it's part truckload freight or full truckload freight or warehousing. And that's sort of been one of the cornerstones of Delivery's growth, which is, when a customer has a logistics need of any kind, we have the wherewithal and the ability to service it. And the second sort of big decision that we made early in our life as a company, which really has been a long-term bet and continues to be one of sort of our core principles, is to build all of our technology and our automation in-house. Very early we said, look, the reality is for an Indian logistics company to be successful, it must have a product technology and data sciences base which is uniquely Indian. And we have to build automation and robotics for India. And specific to sort of the challenges that Indian companies face. So whether it's building an addressing stack or a map stack like we have, whether it's building robotics for our sortation centers, those early decisions are things that over this 15-year period have really held us in good stead. But yeah, I mean, the story of a company over 15 years is really a series of very small decisions made over a very long period of time. So it's very hard to sort of pull only a few out.
Absolutely, and it has yielded returns, Sahil. But if I were to ask you to sort of, crystal ball gaze into the future, and what will be some of the decisions that you will probably take, or what is going to be the next leg of growth as far as Delivery is concerned, where do you see sort of movement happening, and how do you plan to grow from where you are today?
So four ways that we look at it. One, obviously, is continuing to penetrate industries that we've already sort of entered over the last 5, 6, 7 years or so, right? Which is really more of the same. Expand the network, continue to build capacities. High quality logistics capacity in India continues to be something which is relatively sort of less than the economy will need if we are to become a $5 trillion economy. So Delivery will continue to invest in building capacity. We will continue to invest in sort of building out, robotics capabilities, business development capabilities in different cities, expanding our reach, bringing in more truck forms. That's sort of what we've always done, and we'll continue to do that. That delivers sort of one leg of growth. The second is adding new services, compared to what we do today. So one example is, we launched Delivery cross-border, where we have the ability to do not just parcel, but also freight from India to the rest of the world and from the rest of the world into India. So that's a new service for our customers. The other is Delivery local, where, we were relatively underpenetrated in-city logistics. And now we're sort of expanding that service for, all of our 50, 60,000 customers that we have across the country. And we obviously continue to offer technology services, another growth lever. One of them is, warehouse management solutions, transportation management solutions. We've recently launched a map stack. So those are also going to be areas of growth. And the last bit will be sort of new verticals that we've historically not serviced. In India, for example, agri-logistics is a space that we've always sort of wanted to have a certain play in. It's a very large buyer of logistics services. We haven't done much in that sector so far. So that's another sort of new vertical that we expect we'll enter over the next couple of years.
Right. So, Sahil, you're talking about some very, very interesting points here. You've touched upon, your cross-border trade and, of course, the kind of services that you provide in that front. But you also started Delivery International for MSME exports. And that really comprises the kind of decisions that you've taken in the past couple of years. So when we talk specifically about Delivery International for MSME exports, what are the kind of orders that you're clocking on that front? And secondly, as part of this very question, when you talk about international arena and giving a boost to exports and, of course, enabling MSMEs, what are the kind of gains that you're seeing from FTAs, or do you expect to see from FTAs that India is sort of inking with multiple partners across the world?
Yeah, so I think in some senses it was fortuitous timing. When we announced Delivery International in December, and then, for example, the European FTAs have happened after that. Obviously, a reduction of duties is good for MSMEs shipping, for instance, to Europe. The US is still sort of relatively volatile, though we see quite a bit of volume going there. Our anticipation is that as the market for Indian products grows, providing this service to the customers that we have is opening up these new markets to them. Now, we do two parts of this. One is e-commerce, where they're sort of shipping directly to consumers or they're shipping to retailers in these economies. We have the ability to enable sort of this seamless service for somebody who's doing domestic e-commerce with us or domestic shipping with us to now also be able to service orders from a consumer in the US or from a consumer in the UK or in continental Europe or Australia or elsewhere. The other, obviously, is in countries like the Gulf countries or Southeast Asia, you also have an Indian diaspora who wants to buy products from India. So again, our cross-border business opens that up for them.
Right, absolutely, Sahil. So when we talk about operating internationally, will you be considering geographic expansion into the kind of geographies that you are currently working from some of the other countries?
I don't think we'll ever put boots on the ground, Samita, in any of these countries. So we're not going to go and launch transportation operations in other countries because we believe that local players will have advantages that a delivery cannot actually match. But will we build over a period of time a network of fulfillment centers which enable us to have a base in those countries? I think the answer to that is probably going to be yes, as our shipping volumes go up. So operating in free trade zones, being able to warehouse in some of those countries and then link up with transportation networks who are leaders in those countries, that's sort of the strategy that I think delivery will take.
Right, Sahil. So since we're talking about India's logistics landscape, well, that has changed dramatically. And changing the logistics landscape dramatically is AI. How are efficiencies being driven at delivery due to AI, especially when it comes to your operations? And the kind of efficiencies that you're driving from AI, is that also reflecting in your financials?
To some extent. So I think where our use of AI is particularly large, I'll break this up. One is in internal operations, and the second is in customer and client-facing operations. On the client-facing side, what we've been able to do is to make it far easier for clients, for example, to manage a lot of the administrative processes that come with shipping. So today, if you're a customer, you can onboard yourself and start shipping with delivery practically in minutes. You manage your tracking, you can manage delivery issues. For example, you can manage customer service almost seamlessly and very often without any manual intervention, either from a customer standpoint or from the logistics company. The other, obviously, is management of things like claims, returns, delays. All of this now is sort of becoming relatively automated. From an internal operations standpoint, the biggest users of AI for us, one is in terms, obviously, of how we route packages. But I'll leave that out because we've been doing that for a pretty long time. The other, obviously, is we're using systems to determine in-facility movement. So, if you come to our facilities, we are starting to replace human operators moving goods within the facilities with autonomous vehicles. Now, that is one area where we're using AI outside of just, control tower operations and so on. And the other piece is on geolocation and on maps, for instance. So those are starting to show up in terms of operating efficiency. So if you look at our margins, they've been expanding now quarter on quarter for a period of time. So that's sort of how AI has impacted financials overall.
Right. Sahil, let me also ask you about your financials since we're talking about financials. You closed 10,500 crores in revenues in FY26, which is a growth of 18% year on year. Now, which segments remain the biggest contributors to that, and where did gains essentially come from?
So the biggest gains, obviously, from a growth standpoint, were in our parcel and our PTL business, both of which actually grew pretty strongly last year. Parcel growth, obviously, was aided by the fact that we acquired Ecom Express, and then, of course, there was organic growth and share gain overall. And then on the PTL business, we've been the fastest growing part truckload network in India for a couple of years now. We're now, I think, the second largest organized player in this space. As we continue to sort of grow capacities, as we continue to grow our business development outside of the major, 15, 20 cities, we continue to see large growth on the part truckload side. Going forward, obviously, these businesses will continue to grow, but we also anticipate now future growth coming from our supply chain services business. We've gone through a period of sort of reorganizing performance in that business. That phase is now behind us, and we now anticipate that this business will grow pretty strongly as well.
Right.